The sacred clearing of Ashenmoor had never witnessed such a gathering. Saravine kept her gaze fixed on the frozen earth beneath her bare feet, feeling the weight of 1,000 eyes pressing down upon her like stones. The ceremonial gown they had forced her into offered no protection against the bitter wind that swept through the ancient oaks, nor against the cruel whispers that slithered through the assembled wolves. Worthless, defective, a disgrace to the Thornhall bloodline. She had heard these words her entire life. Tonight, they would become official. The bonding altar rose before her, a massive slab of black granite stained with centuries of ritual blood. Upon it rested the ceremonial blade, its edge gleaming with deadly promise in the torchlight. In moments, that blade would cut her palm, and her blood would mix with that of Aldros Thornhall in the ancient rite of claiming. A union she had never wanted, a fate she had never chosen. But Omega daughters of disgraced houses did not choose. They were bartered, traded, disposed of in whatever manner best served their betters. Saravine risked a glance at the raised platform where the honored guests observed the ceremony. Pack leaders from across the realm had gathered to witness the Thornhall heir claim his mate, a political spectacle disguised as sacred tradition. And there, seated at the center of the platform in a throne of carved obsidian, sat the Alpha King himself, Kadrin Vorseth. Even from this distance he commanded attention in a way that made her wolf stir with instinctive recognition. His hair was the color of a moonless night, swept back from a face that seemed carved from shadow and stone. His jaw was sharp enough to cut, his shoulders broad beneath the formal black of his royal attire. But it was his eyes that made her breath catch. Silver. Pure, molten silver that seemed to absorb the torchlight rather than reflect it. Those eyes were fixed directly on her. Saravine looked away quickly, her heart slamming against her ribs. The Alpha King had no interest in a worthless Omega. He was here for politics, nothing more. Bring forward the male. The High Elder's voice echoed through the clearing, and Saravine's stomach clenched as heavy footsteps approached from behind. Aldros Thornhall circled into her vision, and she fought to keep her expression neutral. He was handsome in the way of all Thornhall wolves, golden-haired, broad-shouldered, with features that might have been attractive if not for the perpetual sneer that twisted his lips. He looked at her now with undisguised contempt. "I still cannot believe Father is making me go through with this farce," he murmured, low enough that only she could hear. "Bonding myself to a barren Omega with tainted blood." Saravine said nothing. She had learned long ago that responding to Aldros only made things worse. But do not worry, little mouse. His smile was poison. I have found a way to spare us both this indignity. Before she could process his words, the High Elder was speaking again. Aldros Thornhall, heir to the Thornhall pack, you stand before the assembled wolves to claim this female as your bonded mate. Do you accept her blood as your bond, her body as your vessel, her wolf as your companion unto death? The traditional words hung in the frozen air. Aldros lifted the ceremonial blade from the altar. "I do not." Gasps erupted through the crowd. Saravine's head snapped up, her eyes wide with shock. Aldros turned to face the assembled wolves, his voice rising with theatrical outrage. "I reject this female as my mate. I reject her tainted blood, her barren womb, and her worthless wolf." The words struck Saravine like physical blows. Public rejection was rare and devastating. A female rejected at the altar was marked as defective, unwanted, a creature to be shunned by all respectable wolves. But Aldros was not finished. "More than reject her, I denounce her." He spun back toward Saravine, the ceremonial blade still clutched in his fist. "She came to this altar impure, soiled. She has lain with another male, and I will not bond myself to a whore." "That is a lie!" The words tore from Saravine's throat before she could stop them. "I have never—" The blade slashed across her forearm. Pain exploded through her body as the sacred steel parted her flesh. Blood. hot and impossibly red, sprayed across the white fabric of her ceremonial gown. Saravine screamed. She collapsed to her knees on the frozen ground, clutching her wounded arm as blood poured between her fingers. The cut was deep, far deeper than the ritual required. Aldros had meant to maim her. The crowd erupted into chaos. Wolves shouted in outrage and confusion. The High Elder was calling for order. Somewhere, Lord Thornhall was bellowing at his son. But all Saravine could focus on was the blood. So much blood pooling beneath her on the sacred ground. And then she felt it. A presence. Vast and ancient and utterly inhuman, pressing against the edges of her consciousness. It rose from the blood-soaked earth like smoke, curling through her veins with a heat that bordered on agony. Her blood began to glow. Saravine stared in horror as golden light emanated from the wound on her arm, from the pool beneath her knees, from every drop that had splattered across the altar stones. The glow intensified until she had to squint against it, until the wolves nearest to her stumbled backward with cries of alarm. "What sorcery is this?" Aldros's voice cracked with sudden fear. "What are you?" Saravine had no answer. She had no idea what was happening, only that power was flooding through her body in waves that threatened to tear her apart from the inside. Enough! The single word cut through the chaos like a blade through silk. Every wolf in the clearing froze. The Alpha King descended from the platform with steps that made the ground tremble beneath him. The crowd parted before him like water before a ship's prow, wolves dropping to their knees as he passed. He stopped directly before Saravine. Up close, he was even more terrifying than she had imagined. Power radiated from him in almost visible waves. His silver eyes blazed with an intensity that made her wolf whimper and bare its throat in submission. But he was not looking at her face. He was staring at her blood. "Your Majesty." Lord Thornhall had pushed through the crowd, his face ashen. "I apologize for this disruption. My son has clearly lost his senses. We will remove this female and dispose of her." "You will do nothing of the kind." The Alpha King's voice was soft, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. Lord Thornhall's mouth snapped shut. Cadron crouched before Saravine, bringing his face level with hers. This close, she could see flecks of gold swimming in the silver of his irises, could feel the heat of his body cutting through the winter cold. "What is your name?" he asked. "Saravine." Her voice emerged as barely a whisper. "Saravine Thornhall." "No." Something flickered in his gaze, something that made her heart stutter. "You are not Thornhall. Your blood reveals what they tried to bury. You are something far older, far more precious." He reached out and cupped her wounded arm in his massive hands. Where his skin touched hers, the golden glow intensified, and Saravine gasped as the pain suddenly vanished. Cadron raised his eyes to the assembled wolves. "This female has been rejected by Aldros Thornhall," he announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the clearing. "By ancient law, she is now unclaimed, free to be taken by any male with the strength and will to possess her." He rose to his full height, pulling Saravine up with him, his arm wrapped around her waist, pressing her bleeding body against his chest. "I claim her." The words detonated through the crowd like thunder. "I, Cadron Vorseth, Alpha King of Valdrin, claim this female as my mate before the assembled witnesses." His silver eyes found Aldros, who had gone pale as snow. "Does any wolf dare challenge my claim?" Silence. Absolute, terrified silence. Cadron smiled, and it was the smile of a predator who had already won. "Then it is done." He lifted Saravine as if she weighed nothing, cradling her against his chest. "She belongs to me now." As he carried her away from the altar, away from the blood-soaked ground and the stunned faces of the assembled wolves, Saravine's mind reeled with a single desperate question. "What does the Alpha King want with me?" She did not know. But as his arms tightened around her, As his heartbeat thundered against her ear, she realized something far more terrifying. Part of her did not want to escape. The Alpha King's personal carriage was unlike anything Saravine had ever seen. Black lacquered wood trimmed with silver, velvet cushions the color of midnight, windows of enchanted glass that showed only darkness from outside but provided perfect clarity from within. She sat pressed against the far corner, her wounded arm cradled against her chest, watching the male who had just upended her entire existence. Kadrin sat across from her with the casual grace of a predator at rest. He had removed his formal coat, leaving him in a simple black shirt that did nothing to diminish his overwhelming presence. His silver eyes had not left her face since they departed Ashenmoor. "Your arm," he said finally. Saravine glanced down at the wound. The bleeding had slowed, but the gash was deep and ugly, already showing signs of infection from the unwashed ceremonial blade. "It will heal," she said. "It will heal faster with proper attention." Kadrin reached into a compartment beside his seat and withdrew a small leather pouch. "May I?" The question startled her. In her experience, powerful males did not ask permission. They took what they wanted and expected gratitude for their attention. She nodded slowly, extending her arm. Kadrin's hands were surprisingly gentle as he cleaned the wound with clear liquid that stung briefly before numbing the pain entirely. His fingers were warm against her chilled skin, his touch clinical, but somehow intimate. "You were brave," he said as he worked, speaking out against Aldros's lies. Most wolves would have accepted the accusation in silence rather than risk further punishment. It was the truth. "I have never been with any male." Saravine heard the bitterness in her own voice. "Not that it matters. He achieved what he wanted. I am ruined now, regardless of my actual virtue." "You are not ruined." Kadrin's eyes lifted to hers. "You are claimed by the Alpha King. There is no higher status in the realm. I do not understand why." The words burst from her before she could contain them. "You do not know me. You have never even seen me before tonight. Why would you claim a worthless Omega that your own pack leaders reject?" Something shifted in his expression. A shadow passed behind the silver of his eyes. "You are not worthless," he said quietly, "and I have seen you before, Saravine. Many times." Her blood turned to ice. "What do you mean?" Kadrin finished wrapping her arm in clean bandages before answering. When he finally spoke, his voice was distant, as if he were reaching across a great gulf of memory. 14 years ago, when I was still a prince, I attended a gathering at the Thornhall estate. There was a child playing in the gardens, a girl with hair like fire and eyes too old for her face. He paused. She was crying. Saravine's heart stopped. I asked her what was wrong. She told me that her mother had died that morning and no one would tell her what had happened. They simply took her mother away and told her to stop making noise. She remembered. She remembered the garden, the cold stone bench where she had hidden to weep alone. She remembered a shadow falling across her, a boy with silver eyes and a voice like quiet thunder. She had been terrified at first, but he had sat beside her and let her cry until she had no tears left. He had never told her his name. "You gave me a handkerchief," she whispered, "black silk with silver stitching. You still have it." It was not a question. "How do you know that?" "Because I have watched over you ever since that day." Kadrin's jaw tightened. From a distance, always from a distance, I was bound by duties and obligations that prevented me from acting openly. But I knew who you were, Saravine. I knew what you were. And when I received word that Thornhall intended to bond you to his sadistic heir, I could not stay away any longer. Saravine's mind reeled. 14 years. He had watched her for 14 years, had known her name, her face, her suffering, and had done nothing. "If you knew what Aldros was," she said slowly, If you knew how they treated me, why did you wait until tonight? Why let me endure years of cruelty before stepping in? Pain flickered across his features. Because claiming you any sooner would have started a war. The Thornhalls are allied with 3 major pack territories. Moving against them without justification would have torn the realm apart. And tonight was different? Tonight, Aldros handed me justification on a silver platter. A cold smile touched his lips. Public rejection of a female is his right. Public mutilation is not. By cutting you the way he did, by making you bleed on sacred ground, he violated the oldest laws of our kind. I did not claim you arbitrarily, Saravine. I claimed you because he gave me the legal grounds to take you from him without consequence. She should have felt relief. She should have felt gratitude that this powerful male had finally intervened, that she was free of the Thornhalls forever. Instead, she felt unease coiling in her chest. And what do you intend to do with me now that you have me? Kadrin leaned back against the cushions, his silver eyes unreadable. That depends. On what? On whether you can accept what you truly are? He gestured toward her bandaged arm. Your blood glowed tonight, Saravine. Golden light poured from your veins in front of hundreds of witnesses. That has not happened in Valdrin for over 300 years. The unease tightened into dread. I do not know why that happened. I have never— Your mother, Kadrin interrupted. What did they tell you about how she died? The abrupt change of subject made Saravine flinch. She fell ill. A fever that would not break. That is all anyone would say. They lied. Kadrin's voice hardened. Your mother did not die of fever. She was murdered. Executed in secret by Lord Thornhall himself, because he discovered what she truly was. The carriage suddenly felt very small, very cold. What was she? Saravine breathed. The last living descendant of the Aurelian bloodline. Kadrin held her gaze. And so are you. The name meant nothing to her. I do not understand. The Aurelians were the original wolf line, the first shifters, created by the moon goddess herself to rule over all others. Their blood carried divine power, the ability to heal wounds, sense truth, and in times of great need, to command any wolf with a single word. He paused. They were hunted to extinction 3 centuries ago by lesser packs who feared their power, or so everyone believed. You are saying my mother was the last Aurelian, hidden among the Thornhalls by parents who knew their bloodline would be destroyed if discovered. She kept her head down, suppressed her gifts, married a minor Thornhall cousin to maintain her cover. Kadrin's expression softened slightly. But she could not hide what she had passed to you. When Lord Thornhall realized his household harbored an Aurelian heir, he eliminated the threat. But not me. Saravine's voice shook. Why not kill me as well? Because you were a child, and even Thornhall's cruelty has limits. He thought suppressing you, treating you as worthless, would keep your power dormant forever. Kadrin shook his head. He was wrong. Your blood revealed itself tonight, awakened by trauma and the sacred ground of the bonding altar. Every wolf in attendance saw what you are. The implications crashed over her like a wave. They will come for me, she realized. The packs who destroyed the Aurelians. They will try to finish what they started. Yes. And you claimed me knowing this, knowing that protecting me would make you a target as well. Kadrin's silver eyes blazed with sudden intensity. I claimed you because I have been waiting 14 years for the right to do so. I claimed you because I watched you suffer in silence when I should have been at your side. And I claimed you because— He stopped abruptly, jaw clenching. Because what? Saravine pressed. But Kadrin turned to stare out the window, his face a mask of stone. We will arrive at the palace by dawn. You should rest. She wanted to demand answers, wanted to force him to finish the sentence he had begun. But exhaustion was dragging at her bones, and the events of the night had hollowed her out completely. Saravine leaned her head against the cushions and let her eyes close. She dreamed of blood and golden light, and silver eyes that watched her from the shadows, waiting. The royal palace of Valdrin was built into the face of a mountain. Saravine stared through the carriage window as they approached, her breath fogging the enchanted glass. Towers of black stone spiraled toward the sky like clawed fingers. Bridges of carved bone connected the spires, and wolves in their animal forms patrolled the ramparts with predatory grace. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. "The Palace of Bones," Kadrin said, following her gaze, "built by my ancestors from the remains of the dragons they slaughtered to claim this land. Those bridges are actually dragonbone, yes." Something like dark amusement flickered in his eyes. "My family has never been subtle about displaying power." The carriage passed through massive gates of black iron and into a courtyard filled with activity. Servants rushed to attend them. Guards snapped to attention, and at the center of the chaos stood a tall female with cropped silver hair and the sharp eyes of a born killer. "That is Fenris," Kadrin said, "commander of my personal guard. She can be trusted, absolutely." The carriage door opened, and the cold mountain air rushed in to bite at Saravine's exposed skin. Kadrin stepped out first, then turned to offer her his hand. She hesitated. "I will not force you," he said quietly. "You may refuse my hand, refuse to leave this carriage, refuse everything I have offered. But I would ask you to trust me long enough to hear what I must tell you." Saravine looked at his outstretched hand, at the palace looming behind him, at the future she had never imagined stretching out before her like an unwritten page. She took his hand. His fingers closed around hers with careful strength, and she felt a pulse of warmth travel up her arm. Her wolf stirred, straining toward him with an eagerness she did not understand. "Welcome to your new home," Kadrin murmured. Fenris approached as they crossed the courtyard, falling into step beside the king with military precision. "My king, the council has been informed of your claiming. They have requested an immediate audience." "Requested," Kadrin repeated with dry emphasis. "Demanded, your majesty. Councillor Vexaris threatened to resign if you do not appear before midday." "Let him resign. I have more important matters to attend to." Fenris's sharp eyes flicked to Saravine, assessing. "The female's quarters have been prepared as you instructed. The healers are standing by." "Good, take her there. I will join you shortly." Saravine's stomach dropped. "You are leaving me?" Kadrin turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "There are matters I must address before we can speak further. Fenris will see to your needs and your protection." "I do not need protection. I need answers." "And you will have them." His hand lifted as if to touch her face, then fell back to his side. "Trust me a little longer, Saravine. Please." Before she could respond, he was striding away toward the palace's central tower, his black coat billowing behind him like a shadow given form. Saravine stared after him, her wounded arm throbbing beneath the bandages. "This way, my lady," Fenris said, not unkindly. "The king's chambers are in the eastern wing." "The king's chambers?" Saravine's voice pitched higher. "Surely you mean guest quarters." Fenris raised one silver eyebrow. "You are the claimed mate of the Alpha King. There are no guest quarters for you. Only the royal suite." "The royal suite!" Saravine followed Fenris through corridors of polished black stone, her mind spinning. Every servant they passed stopped to stare. Every guard inclined their head in respect. Word of the claiming had clearly spread. The chambers themselves were overwhelming. A sitting room larger than the entire house where she had grown up. A bathing chamber with a pool fed by natural hot springs. And through an archway hung with silver curtains, a bedroom dominated by a massive bed draped in black silk. One bed. Seravine's cheeks flushed. I cannot possibly. The king will sleep elsewhere until you invite him to do otherwise, Fenris said, reading her thoughts. He was quite specific about that. The reassurance did little to calm her racing heart. Why is he doing this? Truly. A male of his status could have any female in the realm. Why claim a disgraced Omega with dangerous blood? Fenris studied her for a long moment. That is not my story to tell. But I will say this. I have served Kadrin Vorseth for 20 years. I have seen him negotiate treaties, command armies, and execute traitors without blinking. But I have never seen him look at anyone the way he looked at you in that carriage. How did he look at me? Like you were the answer to a prayer he had been whispering his entire life. Before Seravine could process this, a knock sounded at the door. Fenris moved to answer it, her hand resting on the sword at her hip. A young servant stood in the corridor, her face pale with urgency. Commander, a message has arrived for the female. It was found pinned to the eastern gate with a dagger, marked with the Thornhall crest. Fenris's expression darkened. She took the sealed envelope and examined it carefully before handing it to Seravine. It seems Lord Thornhall wasted no time sending his response to the king's claiming. Dread pooled in Seravine's stomach as she broke the seal and unfolded the paper with trembling hands. The message was brief. You think a king can protect you from what is coming? The Aurelian bloodline was destroyed for a reason. Your mother learned that lesson. Soon, you will learn it too. Enjoy your borrowed time, little wolf. The hunt has already begun. The paper slipped from her nerveless fingers. My lady? Fenris stepped forward, alarmed by whatever she saw in Seravine's face. What does it say? But Seravine could not answer, because beneath the written words, someone had painted a symbol in what could only be blood. A crescent moon, with a blade through its heart. She did not know what it meant, but her wolf did, howling a warning from deep within her consciousness. It was the ancient mark of the wolf's bane, an order of assassins that had not operated in 300 years, the same assassins who had hunted the Aurelians to extinction, and they were coming for her. Kadrin found her standing at the window, the threatening letter clutched in her fist. Leave us, he commanded, and Fenris disappeared without a word, closing the door behind her. Seravine did not turn around. She could see his reflection in the glass, could feel the weight of his presence filling the room like smoke. Her wolf strained against her consciousness, urging her toward him with an intensity that frightened her. You knew, she said quietly. You knew they would come for me. I suspected. His footsteps approached slowly, carefully, as if she were a wounded animal he feared to startle. The wolf's bane has been dormant for centuries, but whispers have reached my spies in recent months. Movements in the shadows, old alliances being reformed. And you claimed me anyway, painted a target on your own back. Yes. The simple admission made her turn. Kadrin stood mere feet away, his silver eyes burning with an emotion she could not name. Why? The word tore from her throat. You said you watched me for 14 years. You said you waited for the right moment to claim me, but you never finished telling me why. What am I to you, Kadrin? A political asset? A weapon to be wielded? Some lost princess you feel obligated to protect? You are none of those things. Then what? He closed his eyes, and for the first time, she saw the cracks in his composure. The exhaustion carved into the lines of his face. The weight of something he had carried alone for far too long. Do you know what a soul bond is? He asked. Seravine's breath caught. A myth. A fairy tale told to pups about perfect mates destined by the moon goddess herself. Not a myth. Kadrin opened his eyes, and the raw vulnerability in them made her heart stutter. Rare, yes. So rare that most wolves live their entire lives without experiencing one. But real. I know it is real because I felt it the moment I saw you in that garden 14 years ago. The world tilted beneath her feet. You were a child, Kadrin continued, his voice rough. 10 years old, crying alone because no one would tell you that your mother had been murdered. And I was 18, a prince with responsibilities and expectations, and no right to feel what I felt when I looked at you. What did you feel? Recognition. The word was barely a whisper. My wolf knew instantly, irrevocably, that you were meant to be mine, that you were the other half of my soul, born into a body too young for me to claim. His jaw clenched. Do you have any idea what that is like? To find your fated mate and be unable to touch her? To watch her grow from afar, suffering in silence, while duty and law and basic decency prevent you from taking what every instinct screams is yours? Saravine could not breathe, could not think, could only stare at the most powerful wolf in the realm as he laid his heart bare before her. I told myself I was protecting you, Kadrin said bitterly, keeping my distance so the Thornhalls would not suspect, waiting until you came of age, until I could find a way to claim you without starting a war. But the truth is, I was afraid. Afraid of what? That you would reject me. His laugh was hollow. The Alpha King, terrified of a girl with fire in her hair and too much sorrow in her eyes. Terrified that when you finally learn the truth, you would hate me for waiting so long, for letting you suffer when I could have ended it years ago. Tears burned in Saravine's eyes. I do not hate you. You should. Kadrin's hands clenched at his sides. I should have claimed you the moment you turned 18. Should have damned the consequences and taken you from that wretched house. Instead, I waited, calculated, played political games while Aldros tormented you and... Stop! Saravine stepped forward, closing the distance between them. Stop punishing yourself for choices you cannot unmake. Saravine, you came for me. She reached up to touch his face, her fingers trembling against the sharp line of his jaw. When it mattered most, when Aldros tried to destroy me in front of everyone, you came for me. You claimed me when no one else would have dared. Kadrin's control shattered. His arms wrapped around her, crushing her against his chest with desperate strength. His face buried in her hair, and she felt the shudder that ran through his massive frame. I cannot lose you, he breathed against her temple. I cannot. 14 years I have waited. 14 years I have dreamed of holding you like this. If the wolf's bane takes you from me now, they will not. You do not know what they are capable of. Saravine pulled back to meet his eyes. Then teach me, train me, help me unlock whatever power flows through my blood. Her chin lifted with determination. I am done being a victim, Kadrin. Done being the helpless Omega everyone believes me to be. If assassins are coming for me, I will face them. But I will not face them as prey. Something shifted in his gaze. Pride. Fierce, blazing pride. My brave wolf, he murmured. My impossible, magnificent. The window exploded inward. Glass shards flew like daggers as a figure in black crashed through, blade already slashing toward Saravine's throat. Kadrin moved faster than humanly possible, shoving her aside and catching the assassin's wrist mid-strike. The crack of breaking bone echoed through the chamber. But the assassin was not alone. More shadows poured through the shattered window. 3, 4, 5 figures in black, their faces hidden behind masks painted with crescent moons. They moved with inhuman coordination, surrounding Kadrin even as he snapped the first attacker's neck. Run! Kadrin roared, his body already beginning to shift. Saravine did not run. Her blood was singing. The power that had awakened at the bonding altar surged through her veins, responding to the threat, to her fury, to the sight of her mate fighting for his life. Golden light bloomed from her skin, and she heard the assassins cry out in shock. Aurelian! One of them hissed. Kill her now, before she... Saravine opened her mouth, And the word that emerged was not a word at all. It was a command. Kneel. The power of the Aurelian bloodline, dormant for 3 centuries, exploded from her throat in a wave of golden force. Every wolf in the chamber, assassins and king alike, dropped to their knees as if struck by the hand of a god. Only Saravine remained standing. She stared at her hands, at the light pouring from her skin, at the assassins who writhed on the floor with their wolves howling in submission. Impossible, one of them gasped. The voice was lost. It was supposed to be lost forever. It was never lost. Saravine's voice echoed with harmonics that were not entirely her own. It was waiting. Waiting for someone with the courage to use it. She looked at Kadrin, who knelt among the fallen assassins with wonder blazing in his silver eyes. "I am sorry," she said. "I did not mean to. Do not apologize." He rose slowly, the command's power releasing its hold as she focused on him. "Never apologize for being exactly what you were born to be." He crossed to her in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms. "My queen," he breathed against her lips. "My goddess. My soul." And then he kissed her. The bond ignited. Saravine had never known sensation like this. Kadrin's lips moved against hers with desperate hunger, and everywhere they touched, fire bloomed. But it was not only physical. The bond between them cracked open like a door held shut for too long, and suddenly she was drowning in him. His memories poured into her mind. She saw herself through his eyes, a child weeping in a garden, a girl growing into a woman, a flame he had watched from shadows for 14 years. She felt his longing, his frustration, his agonizing restraint. She felt the moment his wolf had recognized her, the way his heart had stopped, the prayers he had whispered to the moon goddess every night since. Let her live. Let her be safe. Let her, one day, be mine. And he saw her. Her loneliness, her suffering, the way she had dreamed of silver eyes without knowing whose they were. The spark of hope she had felt when he lifted her from the blood-soaked ground, even through her terror and confusion. When they finally broke apart, both were weeping. "The bond," Saravine gasped. "It is incomplete." Kadrin's voice was ragged. "The soul bond requires a claiming bite to seal fully. Without it, we are connected, but not bound. Vulnerable to separation. Then claim me." The words left her before she could question them. Now. Before anything else can tear us apart. Kadrin's eyes blazed with golden fire, his wolf rising to the surface. "You are certain? Once done, it cannot be undone. You will be tied to me for eternity." "I have been tied to you since I was 10 years old and a boy with silver eyes gave me his handkerchief." Saravine tilted her head, baring her throat in the ancient gesture of submission. "Claim me, my king. Make me yours." His teeth sank into the junction of her neck and shoulder. The world went white. Power surged between them, a circuit finally completed after 14 years. Saravine cried out as the bond sealed itself into her very soul, rewriting the essence of who she was to include him. She was no longer just Saravine. She was Saravine and Kadrin, 2 halves of a single whole. And she was powerful. The golden light that had faded after her command now blazed back to life, brighter than before. It poured from her skin, from her eyes, from the fresh claiming mark on her throat. The assassins who had begun to stir screamed as the light touched them, their bodies convulsing before falling still. Unconscious or dead, she did not know. "The bond has awakened her fully," Kadrin said, wonder in his voice. "The Aurelian power flows through you without restraint now." Fenris burst through the chamber door, sword drawn, a contingent of royal guards at her back. She took in the scene, the shattered window, the fallen assassins, the glowing woman in her king's arms, and her eyes widened. "My king, my lady, are you injured?" "We are unharmed." Kadrin's arm tightened around Saravine. Secure these assassins. I want them questioned before they die. It may be too late for questions, Your Majesty. Fenris knelt beside one of the fallen figures, checking for a pulse. They carry poison capsules in their teeth. Standard Wolf's Bane protocol, death before capture. Saravine looked at the fallen assassins, the ones who had come to kill her, who had nearly succeeded. Where did they come from? The Wolf's Bane was supposed to be extinct. Someone rebuilt them. Kadrin's expression hardened. Someone with the resources and the knowledge to resurrect a 300-year-old order of killers. Thornhall, Fenris said grimly. My king, we captured one of the assassins who attacked the outer walls. He confessed before the poison took him. Lord Thornhall has been funding the Wolf's Bane for a decade, waiting for the right moment to eliminate the Aurelian bloodline permanently. And Aldros's rejection tonight? Saravine asked. A signal. The moment your blood revealed itself, Thornhall sent word to his assassins. They have been positioned throughout the kingdom for months, waiting. Fenris's jaw tightened. There are more coming, my lady. Many more. The captured assassin spoke of an army. Kadrin turned to Saravine, his hand finding hers. Can you fight? I do not know. She looked at the golden glow emanating from her skin. I do not even know what I am capable of. Then we will discover it together. He brought her hand to his lips. You commanded wolves to kneel with a single word. Let us see what you can do with an entire army. They moved through the Palace of Bones like shadows, Fenris and a contingent of royal guards flanking them. The sounds of battle echoed from every direction. The Wolf's Bane had not come with a small strike force. They had come to war. The Great Hall was in chaos when they arrived. Assassins in black fought against royal guards, blades flashing in the torchlight. And at the center of the carnage, directing his killers with cold precision, stood Lord Thornhall himself. Aldros was at his side. Saravine. Aldros's face twisted with hatred when he saw her. You were supposed to die quietly. Bleed out on the altar like the worthless bitch you are. Your plan failed. Saravine stepped forward, golden light building around her. As did your father's plan. As did every scheme your wretched house has ever conceived. You think your parlor tricks frighten me? Aldros drew his sword. You think that dog beside you can protect you forever. The Wolf's Bane has killed hundreds of Aurelians. One more will make no difference. She is not alone. Kadrin snarled. His body exploded into his wolf form, massive, black as midnight, eyes blazing silver in his animal form. He launched himself at Lord Thornhall with killing fury. Aldros charged at Saravine. She did not run this time. Stop! The command ripped from her throat with the force of a thunderclap. Aldros froze mid-stride, his body locked in place by the power of the Aurelian voice. His eyes bulged with terror as he realized he could not move, could not breathe, could not do anything but stand frozen while Saravine approached. You called me worthless, she said quietly. Defective. A disgrace. She circled him slowly, golden light trailing from her fingertips. You cut me, made me bleed in front of hundreds of wolves, tried to brand me as a whore when I had never known any man's touch. Her hand came up to rest against his cheek, and she felt him shudder with the effort to move, to escape. But the truth is, Aldros, you were always the worthless one, a bully hiding behind his father's power, a coward who could only feel strong by tearing others down. She leaned close, her lips brushing his ear. Kneel before your queen. Aldros crashed to his knees, a sob of humiliation tearing from his throat. Around them, the battle had stilled. Every wolf in the hall, assassin and guard alike, stared at the glowing woman who commanded them all with the voice of the gods. Lord Thornhall lay dead at Kadrin's paws, his throat torn out. The remaining Wolf's Bane assassins threw down their weapons. Kadrin shifted back to human form and walked through the carnage to stand beside Saravine. His hand found hers, their bond humming with shared triumph. "It is over," he said. Saravine looked at Aldros, still frozen on his knees, tears of humiliation streaming down his face. "No," she replied. "It is just beginning." Justice came swiftly to House Thornhall. In the 3 days following the failed assassination, the full extent of the Thornhall conspiracy was laid bare. Lord Thornhall's private correspondence revealed a decade of planning, secret meetings with Wolf's Bane leaders, payments funneled through merchant guilds, and a network of spies positioned throughout the kingdom. The evidence was damning and irrefutable. Aldros was executed at dawn on the 3rd day. The sentence was carried out before the assembled packs of Valdrin, who watched in silence as the male who had tried to murder their queen paid the ultimate price for his cruelty. He died on his knees, just as Saravine had commanded him, a fitting end for a wolf who had spent his life forcing others into submission. The Wolf's Bane was dismantled entirely. Those who surrendered were given the choice of exile or service to the crown. Those who refused were granted no such mercy. By the week's end, the assassin order that had terrorized the Aurelians for 3 centuries had been scattered to the winds, and Saravine, the last Aurelian, took her place on the obsidian throne beside her mate. 2 weeks after the battle, as preparations for their official coronation ceremony reached their peak, Saravine stood before a mirror in the royal chambers, hardly recognizing the woman who stared back at her. Gone was the hollow-eyed servant girl in a blood-stained ceremonial gown. In her place stood a queen, crimson hair swept up beneath a circlet of silver and moonstone, gown of midnight blue silk hugging curves she had never known she possessed, and eyes that glowed with the faintest hint of Aurelian gold. "You are nervous," Kadrin murmured, appearing behind her in the mirror. "I was a servant 3 weeks ago." Saravine adjusted the circlet that rested on her crimson hair. "Now I am supposed to be a queen." "You were always supposed to be a queen." He came up behind her, his arms wrapping around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. "The moon goddess does not make mistakes, my love. She simply takes her time revealing her plans." Saravine leaned back against his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heart through the bond they shared. In the weeks since the battle, she had grown into her power with surprising speed. The Aurelian gifts that had been suppressed for so long now flowed through her freely. The voice, the healing touch, the ability to sense truth and lies. But more than power, she had found something she had never dared to hope for. Home. "I love you," she said softly. "I do not think I have said that yet. Not properly." Kadrin turned her in his arms, cupping her face in his hands. "You have said it 1,000 times. Every time you look at me, every time you touch me, every time you fight beside me as if you were born for battle." "Perhaps I was," she smiled. "Born for battle. Born for you. Born for everything." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the tip of her nose. "My warrior. My queen. My soul." Through the bond, she felt his emotions wash over her. Love so vast it made her eyes sting with tears, pride so fierce it stole her breath, and beneath it all, a profound sense of peace. The restless ache that had plagued him for 14 years had finally been soothed. He was complete now. They both were. The coronation bells began to ring, calling them to their destiny. Saravine took Kadrin's hand and walked with him toward the great hall, where 1,000 wolves waited to witness the beginning of a new era. She had entered Ashenmoor as a worthless omega, destined for a loveless bond with a cruel mate. She left it as the most powerful Queen Valdrin had ever known, soul-bound to a king who had loved her since before she knew his name. The moon goddess did not make mistakes. She simply took her time revealing her blessings, and Saravine's blessing had been worth the wait. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story.